Hi guys, imagine if two MPs from Labour or the Conservatives travelled to China and attempted to speak with people there, and instead were picked up, detained by Chinese immigration, and then deported. What do you think the UK government and members of parliament would say? China would be condemned, and the Chinese ambassador would be called to have a meeting with the Foreign Secretary to explain the situation. However, when something like that happened to two Labour MPs attempting to visit the West Bank, instead of showing solidarity with British members of parliament, Kemi Badenoch backed the government whose Prime Minister is wanted for war crimes by the ICC. Insane stuff, have a listen.
The big story with these two Labour MPs being refused entry to Israel, the government has said it was unacceptable, but do you think that Israel was entitled to do what they did? What's your view?
Countries should be able to control their borders. What I think is shocking is that we have MPs in Labour who other countries will not allow through. I think that's...
My goodness. Are we actually hearing this? The problem is not the Israeli government. The problem is these Labour MPs. The problem is not a Prime Minister who's wanted for crimes against humanity by the ICC. No, the problem is two Labour MPs, one who I believe is a member of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, who were banned, who were deported from a so-called ally of Britain. You know, the China example is probably not a good one, because China is not an ally of the United Kingdom. But can you imagine any other country? Can you imagine if two MPs travelled to France, or to Germany, or to Italy, and they were deported? What do you think the British government and members of parliament would say? They would condemn, and rightly so, the so-called allies. But when it comes to Israel, for some reason, Kemi Badenoch is saying, no, the problem is not Netanyahu's government. No, the problem is two MPs who went to the West Bank to speak to people.
That's very significant.
Shocking because?
Well, if you look at the reasons why the Israeli government has given for why they're not letting them in, they don't believe that they're going to comply with their laws. MPs do not have diplomatic immunity. I believe that the people who represent us in Parliament should be people who should be able to go anywhere in the world and people not be worried about what they're going to do when they go into those countries.
Are you suggesting the Israelis were right to worry that these two Labour politicians would break the law if they got into the country?
Well, that's the reason they gave. And
that's the reason they gave, and that's good enough for me. Once again, the Prime Minister of Israel is wanted by the ICC. If this guy arrived in Britain, he would be arrested. The UK, under the obligations of the ICC, would have to arrest Netanyahu if he arrived in Britain because he's wanted by that court. Just think about that for a moment. Two MPs who have not committed any crime, are not wanted by the ICC, travelled to Israel, tried to visit people in the West Bank, and were deported. And Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the opposition, is not showing solidarity with the MPs, citizens of Britain, people who she should be showing solidarity with. No, she's showing solidarity with a country whose Prime Minister is wanted for crimes against humanity. Like the example I gave at the beginning, China, is probably not even a good one because the UK is not allied with China. This would be like MPs travelling to France or Germany, Italy, and then being deported. If they were, that would be wrong as well. And the UK government would be right to condemn the administrations in those countries. Would be right to call the respective ambassador, and ask them to explain themselves.
What I believe is that every country should be able to control its borders. We do the same thing. There are many people that we don't allow into our country, and I don't think we should be setting precedents in a different way.
So just to be clear, you believe the Israeli government's account of this, not the Foreign Secretary who says they were treated unacceptably?
The Foreign Secretary has given his view. I've given my view.
My goodness. How pathetic this individual is. Imagine any other country, apart from Israel, deported two MPs. Maybe it's because she hates Labour, maybe that's why, or maybe she doesn't give a crap about, the rule of law. She doesn't care that a country whose Prime Minister is wanted for crimes against humanity is deporting elected officials. And this was not even Gaza. This was the West Bank. Like, if the argument was, look, there's a war going on at the moment, it wasn't right for them to go there. I don't agree with that argument, but that would be a stronger one than elected officials going to the West Bank. Deported. Not even, look, they were held up and they were not allowed in or whatever. No, they were deported from an ally. This is insane. But worse is the leader of the opposition not showing solidarity. Now, at the moment of the recording of this, David Lammy has not called on the Israeli ambassador to explain the situation. I hope that will change. I could be wrong. Maybe it's happening at the moment. I hope that's what's going to happen. I hope the Israeli government will be condemned for this because they are the ones responsible. Just imagine any other country. Imagine if MPs travelled to Italy and the Italian government deported them. People would be up in arms over it, and rightly so. Why is this not happening? Kemi Badenoch has once again demonstrated to be completely useless.